get us started. It's 6:01. My name is Andrea Hook. I'm the president of AIA Jacksonville this year. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our February chapter program. I'm just going to take a quick reminder, give everyone a quick reminder that we're just a couple days short of our license renewal deadline. So make sure that you're going on to DBPR and renewing your license. You know, it's very important to do. Don't let it slip past you. There's only a couple more days. So please remember to go online and complete the renewal process for your license. And speaking of your license, AIA Jacksonville met this morning with State Senator Aaron Bean to advocate on behalf of our membership. We advocated for strong protections for our professional licensure, in addition to other issues critical to our membership, such as contract negotiations and resiliency. If you could please mute if you're not speaking, we're getting a little bit of echo. Thank you. So we met with State Senator Aaron Bean. It went very well. AIA Jacksonville was well represented, and he was definitely in support of strong protections of our architectural license, and said he couldn't imagine, of course, this not being a regulated profession, and how important it is that our work protects the health and safety of the public. And so it was a very productive conversation, and just wanted to let you know that your interests are being represented through AIA Florida at the Congressional State Congress level. And so now to turn the topic from politicians into the buildings that they work in, I'd like to ask Dean, our chapter director, to please introduce our chapter program.
Thank you, President Andrea. It is good to see AIA members and AIA fellows, allied members and guests on this call today. Our program is about the architect of the Capitol. The architect of the Capitol oversees 570 acres of grounds and 18.4 million square feet of buildings, including the United States Capitol, congressional office buildings, the Library of Congress complex, the Supreme Court complex, and even all the artworks contained therein. Construction of the Capitol dates back to 1793, which is also the origin of the architect of the Capitol's office. And the Capitol's really been continuously in use since then, and it's been almost continuously under construction except for a few brief periods. Our speaker today is eminently qualified to discuss this topic with us, as she has been working with the architect of the Capitol since 2011. She has been an AIA member since 1977 and became a fellow in recognition of her preservation work in 1991. Altogether, she has over 40 years of experience in preservation, and her primary specialties are in stone and metal conservation. And I'm sure she will tell us today that proper maintenance of buildings is the best form of preservation. If you have a question, please put it in chat if you don't mind, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. We'll also take some live questions as well. I'd also like to remind you, this isn't a political discussion per se. It's a discussion about architecture and preservation, so we'd like to keep it limited to those topics. So please now, if you will join me in giving a warm AIA Jacksonville component virtual welcome to our speaker today, Mary Oehrlein, FAIA, from the Architect of the Capitol. Mary.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you all. Nice to see you. Can you see my screen? Yes, good, good. Well, Dean just gave part of my presentation, great. So we'll skip over that quickly. Right. Our mission here at AOC is serve, preserve, and inspire. And what that means is that we are here to serve Congress. We are the caretaker of their buildings and grounds and of all of their facilities, Congress and the Supreme Court. I take my responsibility to preserve very seriously. Not everyone here does, but I keep trying to make them take it seriously. And we strive to inspire everyone who visits us by the quality of our work and the quality of our preservation. So who we are. Yes, the Architect of the Capitol has existed since 1793. And although the name has changed various times as, oh, I spelled Brett's name wrong, as the climate in Congress has changed. So at times the architect was called the Superintendent of Buildings and Grounds. And that was the name given to Elliott Woods when he was designated Architect of the Capitol, because he was not an architect, and the AIA objected to the fact that a non-architect was being called Architect of the Capitol. So the title was changed briefly to Superintendent of Grounds, of Buildings and Grounds for the Capitol. But after he was in office for a while, he proved that he could actually function even though he was an engineer. And so they gave him back the title Architect of the Capitol. It has gone through several iterations, but has not changed recently. Our current Architect of the Capitol is not an architect either. And I have to say that the AIA was not very happy about that. But Mr. Blanton is the 12th Architect of the Capitol. So this is the oldest photograph we have of the Capitol. It's 1846. Which shows it in its smaller form with bullfinch's funny shaped dome on top. We have about 2,100 employees. It changes sometimes daily. And we oversee the infrastructure and facilities of the Capitol campus, which is, as Dean said, about 18.5 million square feet and 500 and some odd acres of space. Our staff consists of architects, structural, civil, MEP engineers. We have environmental engineers, fire, life safety, construction managers and inspectors, arborists, horticulturists, botanists, landscape architects and contract specialists. But the bulk of those 2,100 people are in our shops. And we have terrific artisans and craftspeople in our shops. Plasterers, masons, millwork people, decorative painters, regular painters. We have people who do nothing but abatement. Furniture and upholstery shops, which are really fun. We have in-house electricians, mechanical engineers, maintenance guys. Auto maintenance, because we have a large fleet of vehicles, they are maintained in-house. We don't send them out to a garage somewhere. And we provide all of the housekeeping services for our Capitol complex. So it's quite a few people. So I don't know how familiar you are with the federal government, but there's executive branch, which is the agencies that are under the president, and there's legislative branch, which is Congress. And Architect of the Capitol is the legislative branch, legislative branch agency. There are very few. And so we work for Congress. But what that means is that we are not subject to all of the other rules and regulations that other federal agencies are required to comply with. And I don't know how, if any of you are preservation people, if you know the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation or the 106 process or any of that, we don't comply with any of that. All of our design review, preservation review, code review, and permitting is done in-house, which is at times seems a little incestuous, but that's the way it works. And so we do have our own architectural review board. We have preservation policy and standards. We have our own fire marshal. And we have design manuals that set the standards for our buildings, and we do design to 100-year lifespan minimum. We are in the process of developing new construction design guidelines. We don't do a lot of new construction here. Most of it's rehab, renovation, preservation work, but we have a few projects now that do involve a significant amount of new construction, and some potentially coming in the future for new Senate office buildings. And so we're now working on a set of design guidelines for new construction on our campus. We do follow normal codes. I mean, we have our own safety reviews, but we do follow codes. IBC and FPA, we do comply with all the OSHA regs, but we are voluntary compliance with the EPA rules and regs, which is why we have our own hazmat people in-house to not only remove, but also to monitor our hazardous material abatement processes. So here are just a couple photographs of our shops people. They're great sheet metal people and decorative painters. So what we do, as I said, 18 and a half plus or minus million square feet of facilities. That includes all of the House and Senate office buildings, Library of Congress, Supreme Court, Botanic Garden. We have our own power plant that generates steam and now electricity for our facilities, and 570 plus acres of grounds. We have an annual budget of about $700 million, and we have at any one point in time, I think now there are somewhere between 20 and 30 construction, sizable construction projects underway. We also are responsible for the Capitol Visitor Center, which hosts 5 million visitors a year in the before time. It is totally abandoned and shut down now, and all of our guides are on vacation. So on a normal day in the before time, there were approximately 30,000 people here every day. The Capitol alone houses about 5,000 people on a daily basis when Congress is in session. So this is an overview of the campus looking west down the mall. And I don't know, can you see my pointer? This is our property here. And it stops at this line, looking west.
I think that's the Capitol right there.
Pardon me? And this on a city plan, everything you see here is our Capitol campus. We have a few outlying buildings that are small structures that have been rehabbed. They're actually, one's a church, one's an old funeral home that's been converted to some daycare center, and we do have a power plant which sits off to the south of the Capitol. My office building is down here on the lower right, which I call Siberia, because it's way down the hill and way far away from the Capitol. So just some images of our buildings. The Senate buildings are on the left side, the House buildings on the right. Capitol Power Plant here in the upper right, Botanic Garden, Supreme Court, and then Library of Congress buildings across the bottom. So none of them are small. They're all just like really big. So we also have lots of structures and monuments and memorials. Just a few images here. Lots of historic landscapes. The most famous one probably is the Capitol Square landscape, which was designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, and numerous spaces on campus designed by his successors, the Olmsted brothers, his sons. We also have a very large collection of fine art, decorative art, architectural fine art, and architectural decorative art. And all of those are defined very carefully because there's a split in responsibility between myself. I'm responsible for buildings, and we also have a curator who is responsible for fine art. And we define that as anything that we know the artist is fine art or architectural fine art. And that's under the purview of the curator. The rest of it's mine. So all those buildings belong to me. They're my personal buildings, okay? We also have a huge archive, about 200,000 drawings, and well over 500,000 photographs in our photo archives. So it's quite extensive. Some of the drawings you see here, we have all of Thomas U. Walter's drawings for the extensions, and they are beautiful drawings, as well as Latrobe's drawings and some of Mill's drawings, as well as Bullfinch's drawings. So, but Walter's drawings, as you see here in the upper left, are really, really beautiful drawings. So it's a great resource. We also have botanical, because we have the Botanic Garden as part of our complex. And it has about 60,000 distinct species of plant material, some of it very old, that was collected as part of the Lewis and Clark expedition in the 19th century. And so we have these living botanical assets. And this gentleman in the photograph, every time he sees this, he says, "I am not a botanical asset." So. And so the question is, how do we do it? We focus on customer service, the serve part. We have a really high priority on safety on all of our job sites and every day. We also have a large sustainability group that we've been working very hard to reduce our energy consumption, but there's just a lot of programs every day. I remind them that preservation is a sustainable activity on a regular basis. But we've also been planting vegetable gardens in all of the little corners here and there. Our horticulturists and our grounds, Capitol Grounds landscapers and groundskeepers have been planting vegetable gardens, some of which they reap for their own use, but most of it goes to the local family help kitchens in the neighborhood. So it's just part of what we try to do for our neighbors. We also have 8 AE and EA IDIQ contracts currently, with a base year and 4 option years. And we have 7 multiple award construction contracts so that we can quickly contract with contractors for our construction work, that we don't go out full and open for all of that. And we also have an in-house construction division. And you see a couple of our in-house masons working on site here, doing a little maintenance. So I'm going to show you a couple of projects. Did anybody have any question about any of that stuff? Happy to answer. No.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Hi, this is Jonathan Issa. I was just going to ask you, do you guys ever cross coordinate with other federal disciplines like Army Corps or the Navy or the Coast Guard, any of those federal entities?
We benchmark with Smithsonian and GSA, and we do have some cooperative agreements with, well, right now with Forest Product Service Lab in Madison, Wisconsin. They have after the January 6th little riot we had here at the Capitol, they noticed the damage that was being done to our windows and doors, and went into their warehouse and found walnut and mahogany that they had stored since the early 20th century. And it is currently on a truck being shipped to us to be used for our repairs. So we had a little interagency agreement to transfer those wood materials to us for repairs in the Capitol. So we do, but not often and not directly. Does that answer?
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
Well, to follow that,
Yeah.
what are you doing about quality of glass? Not breakout glass, laminated glass, or something that will keep that from happening again?
Well, let me think about how much I can talk about here. We do have security glass in all of our buildings. It's not everywhere. And it's very hard to break. Unfortunately, the windows that were breached did not have that security glass in it. So, and it's a balance between maintaining the historic windows and historic glass and the security requirements. So we've worked out some ways to do both, which makes me happy and it makes the security folks happy. So.
Gary, I had a question for you. You mentioned that the architect of the Capitol currently is not an architect.
Right.
And that you work for the legislative branch of government. How is the position determined? How is the position selected? Is it by the Senate or House, or how does that work? And is there a term?
There is an 11-year term, and it's an appointment from Congress. Yep. And yes, he's not an architect, he's an engineer. So.
And so that's done by Congress
Yes.
every 11 years.
Yep.
How long?
Unless they leave before that. So, I'm sorry.
How long into his term currently?
Oh, just a year. Yeah, just a year.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? We can come back, think about it. So I have a couple of projects to show you. Yes, sir. Oh, your mic is muted. Well,
I'm sorry.
okay.
You might want to tell them about the last architect of the Capitol. The person was either left the position or something, and then they put an interim architect of the Capitol, and then he was then appointed architect of the Capitol. And then you remember who that was?
Sure, I've worked for several architects of the Capitol, starting with George White.
Yeah.
And then Bill Ensign and Alan Hampman.
Yeah.
And Stephen Ayers was the most recent.
Yeah, Stephen is who I met. I met Stephen about 4 years ago, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, he was a assistant or something, and he took over the reins when the other architect of the Capitol retired or something, and then he was eventually appointed.
He was acting architect for almost 2 years before he was appointed as architect. And when he retired, there were 2 interim architects that were appointed. One, his assistant, the first woman who was acting architect, happy to say. And then there was a second person who was acting architect when she left to take a much more, I shouldn't say this, but lucrative position for her. So, so we're on our 12th actual appointed architect. Okay.
Yeah, it's a strenuous process.
Job.
It's a tough job.
Yeah.
You might want to mention the fact that how the schedule is just absurd on a lot of these things, because Congress comes up with things that, especially when they change participants.
We are in the middle of the moves that happen with each election. It's every 2 years. And which with each election of new members in Congress, there's this shifting of space, moving of people. which is a real, it's an amazing process to watch it happen, that all of our shops are involved, all the painters, the carpentry, the carpet layers, the hazmat people, the furniture and upholstery people, because furniture moves in and out, and this happens in a matter of a few days.
Mhm.
But our staff here at Design Services supports that move. And so we sit with each of the new members to go through office spaces that are available for them, help them select their furniture and do their office layouts. And then those drawings are then given to our shop people and our moving people to get the old people out of the office and the new people in the office with the new paint colors and the new carpet and all of the new furniture. And it happens very quickly in a matter of a few days. So it's quite an orchestrated event. And all of it used to happen by hand with just sketching on bumwad, on hard copy, hardline drawings. For the last 3 years, it's all been done by computer, which thank God makes it much faster and much easier for everybody. But unfortunately, some of the members have trouble visualizing. They're not used to looking at floor plans. And so the computer makes that even harder sometimes. So the next iteration will be 3D, I think, to help them visualize the space, because it's hard sometimes. So yeah, it's quite an event that happens.
Thank
So
you.
we're in the middle of the Senate moves now. I was in the Russell Senate office building today, and the hallways are full of furniture, and all of the shops are working. They're painting and replacing carpet and taking out old light fixtures and installing new light fixtures, and it's an amazing process. So projects, I have I think 3 projects to show you, various sizes. Our projects here range from something very small, which could be a renovation of a bathroom, to right now the largest project is well over $250 million, which is the Cannon total rehab of the Cannon building. So I just have a couple projects, a small project, preservation project, conservation project, which was restoration of the Olmsted lanterns that sit at the foot of the Capitol. Where 4 of them have been done. They were taken down, moved to the contractor's studio, all the copper cleaned, all new wiring, and the glass replaced with restoration glass. So that's 4. There are 10 more, 4 out more, and 6 more which will come back in the next month or so, and then 6 more will go out. The total cost of this project was about $350,000. So we've just also completing the Grant Memorial Bronze Conservation and the pedestal restoration, pedestal being all that white stone you see. This has taken a really long time to do because it's temperature, weather sensitive work, and we can't enclose it. So we've been working on this now for 5 years, but sort of backwards. And we've been working in the wrong order on this project, is that we did the bronze conservation first. So this is what Grant looked like when we started. He got a scrub down with some soap and water and brushes. And then after some fairly extensive testing, we landed on removing the corrosion using a microabrasion process, which is very fine, soft aggregate in water that getting a little manicure, removes the corrosion without damaging the surface of the bronze. So it was totally cleaned, got new patination, got new color, which is the brown color, was put back on to get it back to the original color, and then has several coats of lacquer, as you can see in the lower right, which was spray applied. Again, very temperature, humidity sensitive. So it's like they would work for a couple days, and then the humidity would crank up, and so we would have to stop and wait for it for the weather to be right again. There was also a fair amount of replacement of missing pieces. These are sculptures that unfortunately are easy to climb on, so a lot of the harnesses and bridles and things were broken off because people use them as steps to climb up on top of the sculpture. So they were fabricated in foundry, new cast bronze pieces, and here you just see one of them being reinstalled. So this is the completed bronze back to its original bronze color. Historic photograph of the dedication, which was in 28, sorry about that date, 28, I think. So this is the dedication day, and I don't know if you can see in this photograph in the lower left, there's a light fixture with a round globe on it, and those had been removed sometime in the 1930s, not long after it was dedicated. And we thought it would be good, since we were doing this restoration and we had the funds to do it, to replicate the light fixtures. So here are some other photographs of those light poles before the dedication, before the memorial was finished, and one with the eagle on top. So we used these historic photos to create new drawings for replication of the bronze lampposts. Here you see our design drawings, and after, it took about a year to get these fabricated, to go through the modeling process. Here you see Martha with the eagle. She made this beautiful eagle, and of doing the models, making the molds, doing the castings, and then assembling the fixtures on site. So here you see them back in their original locations. They also have new stone pedestals that were made from stone to match the original Vermont marble of the pedestal. So the largest of our projects right now is the Cannon Renewal, which is a total building renewal. All systems are being replaced. It's a 5-phase project. We are moving into the 4th phase of work. This is a photograph of the 3rd phase of work along Independence Avenue. Includes restoration of the exterior stone and metals, as well as, I mean, some people would call it a gut interior, but it's not. You can just see a photograph here of replacement of one of the stone medallions that has the brackets in the corners, which had failed. So it was recarved and new ones installed along this cornice line. There was a new roof built, this sort of temporary enclosure, so that we could take off the old roof and add a 5th floor to the building. And it was all done underneath this temporary roof structure. And this is some of the views of the interior while the work was underway. Every piece of pipe and conduit and infrastructure has been replaced in the 2 phases that are complete. So we did our best to keep the historic materials intact. Sometimes more was demolished than I would have liked, but it all went back together pretty well. And I actually got Congress to agree to use the historic paint colors, which is absolutely amazing. So the original daises in the committee rooms were dismantled and rebuilt in the reconstructed committee rooms. Here you see it with all of its new infrastructure, all of the IT and electrical to power the new video screens and microphones and communication devices that are in the dais. The original, it looks the same on the exterior, but everything inside is new. So Oops. So, sorry, the third project I have is the Capitol Dome, which fits in sort of the middle in between that. This was a $62 million project. And I don't know how much everybody saw the Dome project, right? But this is what the cast iron looked like when we started work, not in great condition. All of the paint was stripped off of the stone using sandblasting and in some cases, chemical strippers. And a large part of the ornamentation was disassembled, as well as the balustrades were disassembled because of the amount of corrosion inside on the cupola balustrades. And here you see some more of the disassembly. These pieces from the ground look tiny. They're not. They're big and they are heavy. So it took a lot of people and a lot of heavy equipment to move this ornament around. So here you see the balustrade disassembled in the warehouse. All the pieces were then cleaned and repaired. Where we could, with the small pieces, the cast iron can be brazed, but it doesn't heat very well with the welding torches. And if you don't heat it evenly, it gets very brittle and it just cracks apart. So only the smaller pieces could be welded or brazed for repair. We had a lot of new pieces that were cast. This is the foundry in Salt Lake City. The same people who made the lampposts for Grant, casting new pieces for us. There were a lot of cracks that you saw in the first photograph or the condition photograph, and they were repaired using a method called lock and stitch, which basically is a series of bolts that are screwed into the cast iron along the cracks and then ground off, and that ties the two sides of the cracks together, and then the crack itself is filled. So you can see some of the completed lock and stitch work on these pieces of cast iron. Everything was painted, primed and painted 2 coats. These photographs of the painters up on the dome make me dizzy, but those guys just thought it was great fun. So I'm glad it was them and not me. There was also a glass replacement, which was custom fabricated for us at a glass fabricator in state of Washington near Seattle. These are very large plates of glass, but they have a texture on them that's kind of a rippled finish. And because of the size of them and the size of the plate that was needed and the amount of molten glass that was necessary, there were very few fabricators in the country that could do this. And we searched for quite a while to find someone who could do this, to pour this glass in one piece. So you see it, the broken ones coming out and the new ones being installed. The numbers, everybody likes numbers. 1.1 million pounds of cast iron on 25 levels and 52 miles of scaffolding. We have 300,000 square feet of surface to paint, which took 1,200 gallons of new paint. We repaired 12,000 inches of cast iron, and there were 14,000 individual pieces of cast iron that were removed and reinstalled. Now, somebody here kept track of all that, right? So, you have any questions for me? Any more questions about what we do or projects or?
Mary, that was a great presentation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You mentioned earlier about a new Senate office building coming. Now, the Senate hasn't gotten any bigger in terms of members, I would think. So tell us a little bit about why that's needed and where it's going.
Well, it's both House and Senate because because the staff House, we just acquired the O'Neill building, which is next door to me right now, down here in Siberia. So that took a little bit of the pressure off of the House side. But the staff continues to increase, is that the members need more and more support to do their business. And things on the Senate side are pretty crowded. I mean, it's really a lot of people in a small amount of space in some of the offices. They will pack 10 and 15 people into an office that's 25 by 25. And that's not ideal working conditions. So there is very much a need for more space for people. And our buildings date from, well, the Capitol was first occupied in 1800, and the newest is 1965. Some of them are better able to withstand the security requirements of a modern building than others. And so part of that is also pushing some new construction, that we need safer buildings.
So I have a question.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you'll be able to address them, but after the riots, are there architectural changes being made for security purposes? And do you know the overall cost of the repairs?
We haven't made changes yet, but I expect that there will be. I think people are still trying to figure out what happened and why, you know, and once they do that, then we'll be tasked with figuring out how to make everything safer. Right now, we're in this fortified space. I mean, we're surrounded by fences and security. I mean, there are still 5,000 you know, National Guard troops here on campus with us every day. So there's lots of talk of the fence staying, or, you know, building a new fence. I hope that doesn't happen. But I think that some of the security personnel feel that that's the only way to keep it safe, keep people away from the Capitol. But I would hate to see people kept away from the Capitol. And I think that Congress feels that way too. And they have deflected proposals for fencing many times in the last 20 or 30 years. So we'll see what happens this time. But you know, you no longer can walk up onto the steps or the porticos of the Capitol. They keep people, even before January 6th, keep people back away from the entrances and away from the access to the member spaces. But the grounds are still open to the public, and I hope that they stay that way. We'll see what happens. I expect that there will be more security measures put in place. And it's just, how do we control that?
Mary, I'd
So
like
that
to
it,
ask a question also. This is Andrea. I'd like to ask a question. You mentioned new construction, and the architect of the Capitol, when you showed the buildings that you cover, there's a wide range of age of building.
yes.
And even style. And so I kind of wonder, how do you guys handle design philosophy around new construction in a historic preservation context?
Well, that's why we're working on design guidelines now for that new construction, is to make sure that we have some general guidance in place for anybody that will be contracted to provide us with new designs for new buildings, new facilities. And it may be, you know, what's the height of the building? What's the materials of the building? I mean, we build to a 100-year standard, and our primary buildings are required to be built with stone. But there's never been a requirement about, you know, I mean, our buildings range from the Capitol, which is this massive bearing wall construction, which could withstand anything, to the newest building, which is cavity wall construction. I mean, it's concrete block, steel frame, and a very thin cladding of marble. Now, you can still call it a marble building, but it has a different mass and a different character than. It also was built in a period of time when energy conservation wasn't such a big deal. So it's not really very efficient energy-wise. It was that 1965, 70s, you know, we got oil coming out of our ears kind of mentality. So we're struggling with that in our newest properties. So the idea is that we have a design manual in place that says, these are the materials we use for our piping and our plumbing and our mechanical systems and our cladding and so forth. But we have nothing that says this is what the character of the building should be to fit into the rest of the buildings on campus. So, and I have to tell you that when the Rayburn House office building was built, everybody hated it. There are still people who hate it. I think it's a pretty nice building. And the same thing happened when the Hart Senate office building was built, because it was a new construction in the midst of our historic buildings, and nobody liked it. And there are still people who think it's awful. So
I know that there's the Secretary of the Interior has some standards for building within a historic preservation context, but they are somewhat subjective, you know, when you're talking about the character of a building. And so ultimately it comes down to the interpretation of the reviewer that
right.
look with those guidelines and apply them. They're not prescriptive, like you mentioned, specific materials and things like that. When they're not prescriptive, they're subjective, and the reviewer
Yes.
ends up with a lot of control. But you mentioned that within the AOC, you're essentially self-governing. So that
Yes.
is an internal function.
Right. We have our own architectural review board, and it's actually the architectural review board that's working on design guidelines. And our architectural review board is made up of myself and our head of our design and preservation branch, and representatives from each of our jurisdictions. We have these little sort of we call them jurisdictions. So all the Senate is one, and the House office buildings is one. The Capitol is a separate. Library of Congress is a separate jurisdiction. Supreme Court. So representatives from all of those. So we get cross-campus representation when we do project review. We also have the preservation policy, which has not the same language as the Secretary of Interior standards, but similar about compatibility, because we do additions to things and we do make interior alterations. And so our preservation policy applies to anything that's in a restoration or rehab zone of the buildings. We've gone through and basically zoned our buildings. So,
Go get ready.
So each room or space in the building has a classification. You can be in a restoration zone, which are the primary spaces, or in a rehab zone, which means there's things you need to keep, but you have a little more flexibility. And then there's the renovation zone, and you're free to do whatever you need to there. So the preservation policy applies to restoration rehab zones.
So what's your personal unknown gem that we should keep an eye on?
Say it again.
What is your personal gem, unknown gem that we should maybe keep an eye out for?
At the Capitol?
Yep.
What do I like best?
Yep.
Oh, parents aren't supposed to say which child they like best. You know, I'm a stone and metal person, so I get excited about all of the stone. We're about to start the third phase of restoration on the Capitol stone on the west front, which is the only original part of the building that's still exposed, and it's the Aquia sandstone. And so that's my current child of choice. Any other questions? That project is out for bid, by the way. So, I did tell you about our IDIQ architects. We do hire outside architects. A lot of our projects go through the IDIQs, but not all. It's again to get us able to contract quickly for things that we need. We can't do everything in-house, we know that. And we can't have all the consultants we need in-house. So we do have the IDIQs, and there are 8 of them, and they are large teams of people, not just the prime architects and engineers, but also include a lot of consultants to cover, oh gosh, kitchen design and all manner of specialty things that we have, because we feed 30,000 people a day
Mary,
in a normal time.
Mary, since it's federal work, is it true that you do not have to be licensed in Maryland or DC to do the work? You can just be licensed in general in one state?
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
I think that we do ask our IDIQs to have an office in Washington.
Okay.
That's pretty easy to do. So.
Are there any other questions for Mary? Seeing none, Mary, I'll thank you for your time. It's been a great evening, and thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. And Brett says he's sorry that he wasn't able to be here, but hopefully I'm a good substitution.
Come down and see us in Jacksonville sometime. You'll be more than welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. And you come to Washington. You can't come to the Capitol right now, but I'm hoping that by the end of the year we can change that.
I'll turn it back over to President Andrea to close the meeting.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Dean. Thank you so much, Mary. This was a really great presentation. I was really excited to see this, and I'm glad that I know you guys had started talking about this presentation before January 6th, and it's awesome that this didn't get derailed. So thank you so much for sticking with us and showing us, I don't know, what I could be when I grow up, fun future career paths that I think a lot of us hadn't considered, and just it was a great peek into what you guys have to do to maintain our national assets. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And with that, we will wrap it up. Thanks everyone for joining us, and please join us next month for the March chapter program. We're going to have another awesome lecture in March, so please join us then.